You've written a story and you're reading back through it, or you just got notes back. And as you're reading or reading through the notes, you have this one thought: my story sucks. Stories can tank for any number of reasons, but we're going to cover a few of the biggies today. Let's jump in. So we're going to cover with some of the things that you might have done to make the story bad, and then we're going to talk about some things that you might have not done that's not giving you the results that you really want. So first, let's talk about things that you might have done. Perhaps you've telegraphed the story too much because you're focusing on structure instead of storytelling. The thing is with screenwriting, we've talked about this a lot on this channel, so just watch some other videos. You're going to hear me talk about this. There's a difference between having a solid story and telling that story. So you got to have a story. It's got to have all the pieces. Someone wants something badly, they're having trouble getting it, they get it or they don't. You have to have all of that stuff. But then you also have to tell it. And if you start to tell it in exactly the way the story is structured, now it starts to feel telegraphed. It starts to feel predictable. So if you're following story structure too much, okay, that's going to give you some problems. People are not going to like your story. They're going to say it's predictable. They're going to say it's boring. They're going to say your characters are flat. They're going to say they're not interested in the story. And you're like, but I've got all these twists and turns and all that. But it's like, yeah, you got a twist coming on page 60, but I saw it coming on page 7, right? Because you just laid it out. So yes, understand structure. You got to have a solid story. You got to have all those pieces, okay? But once you have that structure, how you then tell that story, okay, that's going to be a little different. Don't get so tied into following structure that you lose the wonder of telling a story. Now, the other part with this is this one other little component, and that's the storytelling component, because of what storytelling is. Storytelling is concerned with the audience. A lot of times when we're starting out telling stories, we just want to make sure we've got the story good, right? The story's working, and maybe your story is functioning perfectly fine. The problem is you also, as a screenwriter, have to pay attention to the audience's experience of participating in that story. You have to create ways for them to participate. You've got to create some tension. You've got to create some hope. You got to create some fear. Lots of things that you've got to be doing to help tell the story. So you might just be focused too much on the story and not enough on the audience, and you've kind of tied yourself into story structure and just letting things unfold as the structure tells you you're supposed to do it. And that's usually where problems just really start to occur. See this one all the time. Here's something else that might be making your story bad, is you've made your main character, your protagonist, too passive. They just don't do anything. They just kind of go along, they follow along. Oh, everybody's going here, I'll go there. Everybody's going here, I'll go there. You just kind of follow along. They're too passive. That is no fun. It is not an exciting story because they're not trying to do anything. They're just like along for the ride. Now, maybe you've got a character where you want your character to not do the thing, right? You want them to not do it. Well, instead of letting them just kind of be passive and not do anything, you need to actually give them something to do, which is pursuing the other way. You may be familiar, some of you may be familiar with the story of Jonah. Jonah in the Bible, in the book of Jonah, Jonah is called by God to go to Nineveh. Okay, he's supposed to preach there, and Jonah doesn't want to go. But he doesn't just sit there, he runs the other way. He gets on a ship headed to the other side of the world as far as he knew. He's out. Okay, so he's going the other way. That is an active character, even though they're kind of being passive about the thing they need to be doing. So if you got a character, they need to go do something, okay, have them choose to go and willingly try to avoid the thing. They're constantly doing this other thing. That will make them more active. It makes your story way more interesting. Another thing you may have done is you have overwritten your story. Everything is just too much. Your dialogue blocks are too long. Characters are speaking too many lines. All your description is like 6 lines each, or you're talking about how smoke is wafting through the floor and the rafters and all. I don't care. It's a smoke-filled room. Be done, move on. Screenwriting is about being compact and being concise, and you have to learn how to be concise and be compact. If you're overwriting anything, that's going to make the story drag. It makes the audience want to stop participating in it because you're making them suffer just to get through it. It's not a novel. It's a screenplay. You got to be compact. You got to be tight. Just the information we need and move on. Something else you might have done is you've created some supporting characters who are way more interesting than your protagonist. Okay, this is a huge problem. I see this all the time. You got a main character and you start writing, and then because you don't outline, you start finding other characters, and all of a sudden you're writing a bunch of scenes for this other character because they're just way more interesting to you. Okay, they're not the main character. If you want to write their story, then write their story, but stop trying to make them the main character of this other main character's story. That is a major problem. So if you have supporting characters that are actually more interesting than your main character, okay, you've got lots of problems. Your main character should be the most interesting person in the story. That's who they should be. And if they're not, you're going to have some problems. So you want to avoid having supporting characters that are more interesting than your main character. Those are things that you might have done. But before I get into things that you may have not done, if you're finding value, please interact in some way. Like if you haven't done that yet, subscribe if you haven't done that yet. I really do appreciate it. Thank you for interacting. Leave a comment below if there's something that's helpful to you, or if you have a question about something, just drop it below. I will try to answer it. And while we're on the topic of your script not working like you want it to, if you know your script isn't working, you just can't figure out why, if you want my help, I do offer script consulting services. You send me your script, I read it, we get on Zoom, we have about an hour and a half long conversation about it, what's working, what's not working, what are you wanting to do, we try to find some solutions for that. Lots of notes back and forth. It's great fun. If that is of interest to you, that link is below. Something else that might be of interest to you, if you've written a couple of scripts, so you've got a few under your belt, and you want to up your level, if you want to work with me from idea generation all the way through a completed first draft, it's a 4-month long process. I help you, we generate ideas, I give you different strategies to use. It helps you start to hone your process. It starts to help you hone your skill. Plus, I give you a bunch of notes all along the way. So we have lots of conversations pretty much every other week for 4 months, helping you write that script. I mean, this is a robust thing. It's a robust commitment. It's called the Screenplay Navigator. It's my coaching program. There's deadlines, there's online conversations, assignments, all that kind of stuff. You learn the best way for you to write a screenplay, not the way I would write it. I just kind of give you a bunch of options and you start choosing the ones that are going to help you. So we start filling your toolbox with lots of tools, and we work all the way from idea generation to complete a screenplay. If that's of interest to you and you just want to book a free call with me about it, you got questions or whatever, there's a link below in the description. We can chat about it. There's more information there, so check out that link. Okay, so we've talked about things that you might have done and your story is still bad. So what are some things that you might have not done and your story is bad as a result? Well, here's the first one that I see most often. You don't have a story. A lot of new writers, they just have a premise. They have an idea and they kind of try to write it and it fizzles out or it doesn't go anywhere and they're like, oh, I'm a terrible writer. Well, it's not that you're a terrible writer, you just don't have a story. You got to have a story. Someone wants something badly, they're having trouble getting it, they get it or they don't. You got to have those pieces. If you don't have those pieces, you're in trouble. So if you don't have a story, okay, that's going to be a big problem. Something else you might have not done is you don't have enough conflict. Pretty much every story I read, one of my notes is you need more conflict. More conflict, more conflict, more conflict. When I would teach at a university, my students probably got tired of hearing me say that. More conflict, more conflict. I want more conflict. Like, you need more conflict. We're too easy on our characters. We're just too easy on them, especially our main character. We like them. We want them to win, so we're too easy on them. No, you got to punish them. More conflict, more conflict. Internal, external, all kinds of stuff. Give them conflict. Number 3 of something you may have not done is your antagonist is too weak. They're just not formidable. They're easy to beat. You got to make your antagonist look like on paper they're going to win. If I look at the skills and qualities of my protagonist and I look at the skills and qualities of my antagonist, I'm just looking at the list. Antagonists should win every single time, easily. That's how you're supposed to. You got to make them formidable. You can't make them weak. They're got to be smarter, stronger, faster, richer, whatever it is. They are better than the protagonist. So you've got to make your antagonist more formidable. I see so many stories where the antagonist is just weak and it's too easy for the protagonist to kind of do what they need to do. And this kind of speaks to the one I just mentioned about conflict. You're not giving them enough conflict. Make it harder, and one of the ways you make it harder is your antagonist has got to be really tough. Okay, it's the boss level, right? I gotta beat the boss at the end, and he's just hard to beat. You gotta make it on paper where your antagonist is formidable. Don't make them weak. Too many stories have a very weak antagonist, and that's awful. This last one is kind of a button to the first one I mentioned. It's where you ignore the audience's experience and you're only focused on the story. And we kind of talked about that a little bit, but sometimes you're just like so focused on the story, right, that I'm ignoring the audience. I don't even think about them. Okay, you should be thinking about the audience when you're writing a screenplay. When you're figuring out the story and outline stage, I'm writing my outline, I'm figuring out the story. Okay, I'm focused on the story. When I'm writing the screenplay, I should now start to be a little more focused on the audience. What's the audience's experience? How are they feeling? Should they feel happy here or sad here? And that determines how you write the whole scene, how you write the dialogue, how characters speak, all of that. You got to pay attention to the audience. But so many people are trying to figure out the story while they're writing the screenplay. And that's usually not the right way to do it. You want to write the outline. Get the story in your outline. Make your outline as robust or not as robust as you want. Doesn't matter. People do it at different lengths, but you got to make sure you've got your story. Then now go write the screenplay. And when you're writing the screenplay, now you got to pay attention to the audience. But so many people, they're only paying attention to the story and the screenplay, and that's going to give you some problems. So you got to kind of start shifting your focus a little bit and start thinking, when it comes to writing my screenplay, I really need to be thinking about the audience. Hopefully this has been helpful to you. If it has, please be sure to like, subscribe, bell, all those things. I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much for doing that. Drop a comment below. Again, there's links below. They may be helpful to you, so be sure to check those out. Thank you for watching. And when you go to tell a story, I want it to be good. I really want it to be good. But when you tell a story that matters. See you later.